Hey guys.
Hey guys.
How are you doing?
So we have no idea what we're doing.
Not a clue.
And we can't see if anybody's even here. But maybe we can. Our comments just popped up. This is fun because you're trying this out with us.
Yes.
So we are so excited to be here tonight to finally get some information out about the stuff that's been stirring in us for the last few years.
Yeah.
And our desire was to actually do this live and to have actual live workshops. But here we are.
We are live.
We are live.
Just not.
We did get to be live.
We are live. Just not live and in person.
Just not real life. So the weird part I think that's going to be missing for us is the interaction.
Yeah.
We love to teach in an interactive setting.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't one per se, but we can see your comments. So if you're here, give us a thumbs up. Let us know that you can hear us, that you can see us, that you're with us.
Yeah.
And that you're ready to go. Feel free throughout the time that we're talking to post any questions that you have. We may or may not get to see them through the teaching, but we want you to know that we will follow up. It will even be something that we'll probably use in the future to build more content off of, because we've been practicing this for a couple of years. So we're a little bit in our bubble about what we know, and we want to make sure that we're communicating it well to you.
Yeah. So in that, so make sure, so as you guys are getting ready for this, because we're going to start here soon. Hey, Stacy, how you doing? Thanks for jumping on. Make sure you have your pen, notebook, paper, something to write on, because we are going to use some lingo that you may not have heard of before, so you definitely want to write that down. And then we'll circle back around. If you have questions, definitely post them in there, and we'll answer them and try to explain some of those things. But we're going to...
Yeah. There will be resources available as well on the website, probably within the next about 24 hours. Hey, Julie.
Hey, Brad.
That you're going to be able to print off and have resources with you, but we want this to be interactive learning, so feel free to jot notes as you go. And one of the things that we wanted to share with you for sure is where this content is coming from. We don't want you to think that we are coming up with this off the top of our heads. There's actually some really brilliant people who have been studying this out for well over 30 years. This is a key book that a lot of this comes out of. Jim Wilder is a brilliant psychologist who discovered a lot of this back when he was working with Vietnam vets.
Mm-hmm. And Shepherd's House?
Yeah, Shepherd's House was originally what it was called. Now it's Life Model Works. These are old books. You won't find them in print much. I think you can Amazon this one, but most of them are available only through their website. But what we're going to do is take all the psychology terminology. They're not... maybe the most smooth reading, easy reading books. They are psychology heavy, but we're going to kind of boil it down tonight in hopefully about 45 minutes and then expound in further workshops.
Yeah. Another book that has really shaped a lot of who we are and what we do, and even some of the things we're going to share tonight, is this one here. It's called Rare Leadership. It's written by Marcus Warner and Jim Wilder as well. This is a fantastic book. And so a lot of things, again, there's a brain science piece in here. We're not going to really get into that tonight, but that's in here. There's things about just maturity and just other things that really have shaped who we are, come out of this book as well. So check this one out as well.
Awesome. Well, are we ready?
We're ready.
I think we've got everything under.
I think we covered everything.
All right. Let's do it. So we're going to do a maturity overview tonight. We are going to talk, maturity is not a topic that you hear very often. Most people aren't talking about, hey, so maturity, let's talk about that for 45 minutes.
Hey, Trisha.
Hey, Trisha. However, it really is important because it does affect everything that you do. It affects all of your relationships. And tonight we're going to sum up, like I said, they're all the stages, but then we'll take some time in coming workshops to talk more about each stage and why it's important.
Yeah.
So if it feels like we're a little bit speeding through, let us know. But at the same time, we are going to kind of take a 50,000 foot view tonight.
Yeah. So again, guys, grab your pens, paper, notebooks, and get ready. We're going to jump in. So let's talk about just maturity, the definition of maturity. So it's reaching my God-given potential in every age and stage of life. So
interesting.
Yeah.
To think about that maturity plays into who God created you to be.
Absolutely.
Fascinating.
And so there's 5 stages of maturity. So when we talk about every stage, every age and stage, there's 5 stages. So you have infant, child, then you have adult, parent, and elder.
Okay. So infant, child, adult, parent, and elder. So the interesting thing about these stages, I think here in America we would think about maybe some of the stages different. You notice we didn't say anything about teenage land in there, even though that feels like a pretty epic stage. The reason why there's these 5 stages that have been identified is because these are the same across culture. So this isn't looking at what does it look like to be mature in America today, or what does it look like to be mature in Africa today. But the interesting thing is that all the stages we'll discuss are actually cross-cultural.
Yes.
You can take what you learn tonight and in the future and apply it anywhere you go.
Yes.
It exists because not only is it's not just a cultural thing, but there's actually scripture that backs up all of these stages. So it's the way that God designed us to be.
The 5 stages.
Yep. And it's also brain science proven. So there are some really cool things that happen in our brain at each stage of development that cause us to be able to mature into the next stage.
Yes. I think, and that's really awesome.
Yeah.
So one thing too, that's really important.
Hey, Jay.
Hey, Jay, how you doing? One thing that's also very good to know is that your age or your stage of life does not determine your maturity level.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with how old you are.
Okay, explain that.
So another part of that is that back this up. At each stage, we're going to talk a little bit more about this as we get a little further in. I don't want to go too deep right now, but at each stage, there's needs and there's tasks. So there's tasks that you have to do, and there's needs that have to be met in order for you to mature to the next level or to even master that skill what's inside of that stage
of maturity.
Maturity.
Got it.
So if you don't do that, so that doesn't have to do with your age.
Right. It has to do with skill mastery.
Yes.
Okay.
Of the skills in that particular
So
stage.
it's kind of like how a 10-year-old can't really be a parent.
No.
Because one is not biologically possible, even in their brain.
Correct.
But at the same time, a senior citizen could act like an infant and actually be only at the infant stage of maturity.
Absolutely.
Which is really, that is interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting to get it that way. Another thing, that maturity is very valuable. Mm-hmm. It's something that it's important to just life and growing up. It's important to God. It's very important that He wants us to mature, and these are different things that He's even set in place for us to walk through biblically. Honestly,
because He knows that, and He's created us in a way to give us everything that we need, to be all that we need in each stage of life. So He doesn't expect us, like we were talking before, He doesn't expect us at 10 years old to be able to parent.
Right.
We are totally free to be 10 at 10. But also He's given us the ability to grow so that when we're 30, we can actually function fully at 30 in a healthy adult or parent stage.
Yes. Another part of that too. So inside of that, so you have a 10-year-old, and I don't want to get stuck here, but you have a 10-year-old that, as culturally we look at and say, oh, he's a 10-year-old, he acts like a 10-year-old. But then there can be a 10-year-old that we're like, why does he sound like he's 5?
Right. Yep, seen that happen. Yeah.
So there's stages, and because there's skills that were just lacking between the ages of 5 and 10 that just didn't happen for him.
Right. And that's interesting.
Yeah.
So maturity is not automatic. That's something that's important to know, that just because you're 10 doesn't mean you're 10 years old mature, or just because you're 50 doesn't mean you're at an elder maturity. I think there's a lot of assumption in society and in church that just because you are a certain age, you should be able to, or you just are automatically mature. And we're going to share a little bit about our journey tonight, but that was a real big wake-up call for us when we realized we weren't mature. We had major gaps that were creating some really big challenges for us, and we would have never thought the word maturity would have come into play because we had become parents so young, and because we had parented the community quite a bit. Yeah. We felt like, well, we're mature, only to learn that there were gaps, and we'll share those later tonight.
We go on. Yeah. So another thing that's interesting is that unresolved A and B trauma can block maturity.
Okay, so you said A and B trauma.
Yes.
So there's two different types
There's
of trauma?
two different types of trauma.
Okay.
So let me explain it. So actually pretty simple. B trauma, we'll start there. B trauma would be the bad things that have happened to you.
Okay, B for bad.
B for bad. Remember that. B for bad. So that's that's your car accidents. That's sometimes the natural disasters. That's any type of abuse or anything that physically has happened to you. And so that would be the B trauma. A trauma is the absence of something that you need.
Ah, okay. So neglect might be a version of A trauma.
Yes, neglect is a version of A trauma
Okay.
because that's something that you needed, but you didn't receive it.
Right. So you might have needed parents that were able to care for you at a younger age and they weren't, and so then there's some A trauma there. Or even immaturity.
Yes.
I guess when you have someone who's not helping you walk through maturity, that can actually be some type of A trauma. That's
Absolutely, yeah. So it's and if you think about that too, that's the really important part is that we need community.
Yeah, we do. You can't actually mature on your own at all. You need parents, you need community, you need other people to help walk you through. And like you were talking about before, you have your own tasks that you're responsible for completing, but then you also have needs that need to be met by the community.
Yeah.
So maturity doesn't ever end.
No.
And community and the need for community doesn't ever end, because to stay mature and to continue to grow in maturity through the lifelong process, we need community to remind us who we are.
Yes.
And especially community that loves us and points us back to, nope, this is where you're growing. This is who you're designed to be.
Yeah.
And so we'll be talking more about that as well.
Absolutely. So what are some of the signs of blocked maturity? What would that look like?
So if your maturity is blocked in areas which, no fear, this is pretty much all of us. No spouses looking at each other
Not
for the
pointing
next
fingers.
40 minutes.
Not pointing fingers.
And maybe don't look in the mirror for a little bit either, because this might be a little painful. But so some of the signs of blocked maturity are there's an inability to regulate emotion. So at any given time, you could be happy, sad, and not really know, almost feel like you're controlled by your emotions and they're ruling your life, your choices. Also, too, oftentimes you can't stay yourself.
Yeah.
Or you see somebody, you can see this in other people usually a little more easily, like a boss that you go in one day and they're always, they're in a good mood today, and you kind of like, okay, they're in a good mood today, we're good to go, it's going to be an okay day. And then you walk in the next day and they're super cranky and you're like, oh man, this isn't going to go well. And day to day, you're like Jekyll and Hyde. You're not sure who you're going to wake up to. That's actually a sign of immaturity.
Mm-hmm. Another one would be that you're motivated by fear and led by fear. And so what that looks like, it could be something as simple as that you are in a really negative, bad relationship that you can't get out of because you feel like you need that person.
Right, because you're afraid of what would happen if it ended.
Yeah, or who am I without that person?
Right.
So I'm going to, even though it's bad for me and it's horrible, I'm going to stay here because this is what I'm used to and what I'm comfortable with.
Right.
That's a sign of a lack of maturity in some areas.
So another sign, which is one that many people wouldn't see very clearly, because it usually shows up in people who are really, really successful. You might see somebody who seems to have it all together, has the good job, has the perfect marriage, has all the little pieces in life together, but they never seem satisfied. Yeah. They're always looking for something else to kind of fill that need in life, that even though from outside looking in, you look at them and you think, well, what else could you want, buddy? Right. But they just can't seem to be happy with what they have, and that is also a sign of a lack of maturity.
Yeah, lack of maturity. And then one more would be a lack of or poor identity. You don't know who you are. Mm-hmm. And so what do I mean by that? That would be someone that they're always kind of blown by. They're swayed by popular opinion. Mm-hmm. They don't have anything that they can stand on because they don't know who they are. So they'll just follow the crowd because that's what we're doing. So we're gonna just do that. And right. So they lose they just don't have that identity that they need.
Yep. And so if you think about it, that's like a little kid. I mean, you can for the most part take a take a little elementary age kid and today we're going to play soccer. Right now we're going to play soccer. And the next thing we're going to do is go get ice cream. And they're like, oh, okay, whatever. And then, you find them with a little group of friends and the next thing you know, they're doing something crazy and you're like, what were you thinking?
Happened?
And it's because they don't have the maturity to know, like, this is who I am and this is what I do and don't do. And so they're swayed, which is fine. That's great for a little kid who's exploring the world.
Yeah.
It becomes a challenge when it's an adult who is struggling with the same things.
Yeah.
So the reality is, all of us have major gaps in our maturity. And we're functioning in roles that we just don't have the fully developed maturity for because you're 40, you get handed roles. Well, or we become parents, right?
Into roles.
Like we walk into roles, we become parents and we're just not really fully ready to be a parent, but there you are a parent. And so you have to try to figure it out. But you don't have a basis of what figuring it out really looks like.
Yeah.
So, like Tennyson was saying before, every stage has work to do. So there's things that I have to do to grow maturity, and then every stage has needs. Mm-hmm. So there's things that the community needs to do for you to help you grow maturity. And you'll notice that in all the stages that we go through, you're going to see both sides.
Yeah. So you see what our role is and what the community's role is in us becoming mature adults. So are you guys ready? We're going to jump right in. We're going to start at the bottom. So remember, the 5 maturity levels are infant, child, adult, parent, and elder. So we're going to start with infant because that's the beginning.
Yep.
And so you're all at the beginning. So infants are, that stage is that 0 to 3-ish, somewhere in there. And so if you think about an infant, if anyone has babies in the home or they had a baby in the house, infants, they don't know what they need. They don't even know what they want.
Right.
And then they can't express what they want.
Right.
So what do? They make a lot of noise. And then it's up to the community around them to figure out what they need.
Right.
And then give it to them.
Yes.
So their whole role is just to receive.
Exactly. Yep. So they don't, because there's no real give and take there, right? There's not a whole lot of give that they can give. All they can do at that stage is take.
Yep.
But it's actually a really important skill to learn. Learning how to receive is the fundamentals of life.
Yes.
Like, how are you in a relationship, or how can you be in a relationship with other people or with God if you don't know how to receive love from them? Mm-hmm. If you're only ever giving, then and you don't know how to bring back, there's not this beautiful balance that God created, even in your relationship with the Lord. So if you have never learned fully how to receive, and you have this amazing, wonderful Father who gives great gifts.
Yes, he does.
Unlimited, unconditional love, where you can't earn it. We hear about it in church, but some of us, there may be a piece. I know that this was part of my growing process, was that there was a piece of me who was always like, oh, okay, that's cool. I've heard that before. But I didn't understand why there was this weird disconnect. And it was because I never had really been taught how to receive. And so that was an important skill for me to learn so that I could even have a healthy relationship with the Lord and just receive all the goodness that he wanted to lavish on me. I often kind of pushed back.
Yeah, because so often we feel like we have to do something to receive that love. Mm-hmm. And that infant stage is where we learn how to receive love just because we're breathing on this earth.
Yep, that we have value just because of that.
Yep, because we're born.
Yep. And so it's funny because it makes me think about even how the church in the last, I would say, 5 years has really focused on just that statement. Like, no, you have value.
Yeah.
You don't have to earn it. Mm-hmm. And there's still some of us on the inside who's like, yeah, that's a great message, but how is that really work? Real? Like that, I like that, but I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And so, so that's one piece. Sorry, getting a little lost in my notes here. So identity is also built in infancy around either joy or fear. So if you are in an environment where people are really glad to be with you, which, I mean, when you have a little baby, you can't help it.
You're
be
always
glad to be with them.
Yes.
But that's not true for all babies. Not all babies have between the ages of 0 and 3 have an environment where they're truly wanted and celebrated. Or they may have a parent who's afraid, or they may have a very scary environment. And so a lot of that identity is actually built based on the interaction with the community at that time, on the skills of joy and fear.
Yeah, just a really quick story about that just came to my mind on that is just there's when I was doing trauma training, there is a story about this little baby who was 3 months old, 6 months old, and her mother was in a really bad situation. And whenever she would hold her baby, she would be yelling or screaming or be in fear. And so as the child got older, she lived her entire life out of fear. Anytime anyone raised their voice, she would cower because that's how she grew up. Her identity was based in that fear.
Well, even her relationship with her mom was based in that fear. That's what, yeah. And it starts to solidify that in identity in that situation.
Yeah.
So adult infants who have not received these important areas as babies will always be needy adults. So they're always going to be needing something from someone else because they never fully got their needs met as an infant.
Yeah. They won't be able to take care of themselves emotionally, or will they be able to appropriately receive important things from anyone else.
One interesting way that this shows up is even just being able to receive compliments.
Yes.
That sounds so cheesy.
Never thought about that.
Nope. And that tends to be a pretty light level, but if you sense yourself often saying, somebody might pay you a compliment and you're like, no, you. Practice receiving.
Yeah.
Because that's actually a learned maturity skill.
I know. That
as adults, if you feel that resistance, that's usually an indicator that you didn't really fully get that need met.
So you need to practice. So also very quickly, adult infants, they can't handle criticism, even if it's constructive criticism, because again, they were never taught or never were expected to receive anything. They don't know how to receive, so they can't even receive the good things.
Right. Like we talked about a compliment.
Yeah, to help change
their
life.
And so you sure can't receive
any kind of
negative.
Yeah.
Right. Because as an infant, you have to give that give and take that I have value regardless of whether this is a tough thing or an easy thing for me to take. If it's comfortable or uncomfortable, I have full value.
Yeah.
So,
and probably the last thing, not probably the last thing, but the one that you can really see the most out there is that adult infants, they don't ask for what they need because in their mind, if you really love them, then you would just know exactly what they need and then just give it to them automatically.
Right, because you're supposed to be able to read their mind. Right?
Exactly.
So this is a really interesting hit home for me. And I want to take a second and pause here too, because language that we're comfortable with after 2 years is adult infants.
Yes.
Which might be hard to hear. We say it casually now, but as you were saying it, I was like, ooh, that kind of hurts.
You call me a 10-year-old.
Right. We're not calling anybody a name. Okay. We're just trying to give some language to what happens when there's some gaps here. So, but anyway, back to adults who can't identify what they need and ask for it. This was actually a really big starting piece of my own healing journey. So, as we've shared on other videos, about 2 years ago, I personally hit a huge wall. And so it just caused me to start to really press into the Lord, into some community resources to get counseling and a lot of healing. And this is where we were introduced to all of this good stuff. And one of the things that I had learned is that I had been in a 20-year marriage with my husband who I was so angry at because he couldn't figure out what I needed. He wasn't figuring out what I needed and meeting it. Like, that was his job, right? Like, he's supposed to read my mind and fix it. I needed him to fix it because in my infancy,
You're not mind readers.
No. And I know that can be like the joke in marriage, right?
But it's so true.
But it is so true. But I want to make sure that we make it clear that doesn't automatically, just because we're just like, hey, we live together and have lived together for 20 years, you should be able to read my mind. Yeah. Like, it's more than just a reading mind thing. Like, I had actually put an expectation on you. Yeah. To not just read my mind, but to meet needs that I didn't have met in infancy. Because I'm sure at some point we'll share our childhood stories, but I grew up in an alcoholic home, highly neglectful. And so I didn't get some really core things in my infancy that I never even fully knew were still affecting me today.
Yeah.
So in that, it created a lot of challenge because, and I made Tennyson feel like an awful human being because he wasn't reading what I needed and meeting it when it was never really his job. That was my parents' job. They didn't do the job. So I had to figure out other ways to get that met and let my husband be my husband.
Yeah.
So one thing that you'll see in adult infants is that you'll see this in leaders who are immature, that their job is to let you know that they're upset, and your job is to figure out what's going on and fix it.
Yeah.
So we have to be mindful of time. So we're gonna
fly through this, but so I do want to say this. So the primary task to be completed as an infant is learning to receive, and then the primary resulting problem, if that doesn't happen, is that you have weak and or stormy relationships.
Right. You have a really hard time being in a relationship because you can't do the whole give-receive piece.
Yep.
So when an infant learns to tell you what's wrong and what they need, which usually happens right around that 2 or 3 year old range, that's the job of the community to teach that little kid, the little guy who's thirsty, that to identify that he's thirsty, to ask for something to drink, not whine, not cry, not demand, use your words. So when they learn how to do that, that marks the transition to the next stage of learning, which is teaching them how to take care of themselves. That's the job of a child.
Yes. So, so childhood is basically when they're exploring, they're figuring out who they are, they're figuring out where they fit in the world. It's also where they are learning how to, like Janelle said, take care of themselves. A lot of kids that child range is going to be that 4 to about 12. A lot of kids in that early part of that are very selfish.
Oh yeah.
And they're supposed to be.
Yeah, it is actually their whole job, which is a little maddening as a parent because you're like,
you have to share. Why are you doing this?
All they think about is them.
But
yes, that is actually what they're designed to do in that time is to continually assess what they want and what they need and figure out how to get that.
Yeah,
they just don't have a lot of the skills to do that well. And so that's where you get to be their partner.
That's where the community comes in. Right. That's where the parents come in and the aunts and uncles and all the different people that are in their life. And so a child is expected to be able to take care of one person. That's just themselves. And what they lack is the ability to take care of you and themselves at the same time.
Right. So learning to take care of oneself requires the mastering of several personal tasks. So a child must learn to say what he thinks and feels appropriately and ask for what is needed. So we talked about that. Discerning, so learning what brings them satisfaction or joy, that is actually another really important child skill. So when I'm bored, how do I satisfy my boredom? When I'm sad, how do I return back to happy? And again, this isn't something that you turn 4 and you're like, I know how to do this. Again, it's the job of the community to create opportunities for this to happen.
Another part of that too is learning what's good for them and what's bad for them and being able to discern the difference between the two. As they get older, towards that 10, 11, 12 spot, is to actually, okay, that's good for me, so I'm going to do that, but that's not good for me, so I'm not going to do that. Right.
There should be an ability for them to identify that themselves, a growing ability.
Absolutely. Another one would be just discipline, learning how to do hard things. Not just doing, like I just said earlier, not just doing what you feel like doing, but doing what's good for you.
Right.
And it's really interesting. For me, that's been probably the largest skill that the Lord has really had me in this you can do hard things cycle since January. So what are we working on? 4 months now, almost. Of just literally every week, the Lord's like, oh, there you go, another hard thing. Learn, another hard thing. Another hard thing. And guess what? I can do it. And I'm still here. I didn't die. I didn't get hurt. Is it a little uncomfortable? Yes. Does it get more comfortable? Yes. But for me personally, that's been the skill that the Lord that I'm looping right now. He's got me working on, that I'm practicing. Right.
So you would say that was a gap in your maturity. And that you were operating as a child in the way that you didn't know how to do hard things. As a kid, you weren't taught how to do hard things.
For me, it was, everything came pretty easy to me. And so I never had to really work for anything. And so if I had to work for something, then it must not have been what the Lord wanted me to do because it was too hard.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. Yeah, that can be promoted
Because,
by the church as well, right?
Yeah.
When like times get tough, oh, it must be the devil or it must be something else. When no, God actually created us to be able to do hard things. And so the interesting thing about that is that I think in society today with parenthood, and I feel like it's turning back, but there's definitely been a season of parents who are afraid to let their kids do hard things because it might hurt Johnny's feelings, or Johnny doesn't know how to do that, or Johnny might fail at that, or
it's the participation award.
Yeah, the participation award. Like, no, dude, you totally lost that race, and that was a really hard thing. But it's okay. You can feel the weight of the loss, and guess what? We can come back from that because it doesn't determine your value, buddy. And so that's been missing a bit in our society, and so you have this growing generation of people who don't know how to do hard things. Young adults who don't know how to do hard things. When times get tough, they give up or they feel really, really lost. And the good news is that maturity can, like we said, lifelong. So if that feels like you and you feel like you run into this wall of, gosh, that's really hard, and I tend to quit when things get tough, have no fear. This is just one way of knowing a little bit more about yourself and where to start.
Yes.
So let's just...
Yep, do it.
Okay. Time is going so quickly. So one thing that's important to note too at the child level, we talked about a 10-year-old who can't be a parent. But one thing that I want to note here that's important to know is that in my life situation, and I think this, you'll see this in a lot of different people, is that as a child, I was expected to be the parent, be an adult.
Wow.
I had to, in many ways, step up and raise myself and step up and raise my parents at times when they weren't functioning. So I ended up in this, what you would call pseudo maturity, where it was like a flip flop situation where I'm functioning as an adult, functioning as a parent, but I did not have the maturity skills because I was a child. It was not physically possible for me to do that. And so you'll see that as well. We'll get into that at another time, but
just, one thing in that, you can do the skills, like you can do it,
right,
but you're not enjoying it and it doesn't bring you joy, and it creates this atmosphere of fear that you live in and that people around you live in.
Right. And one of the biggest things that gets given up in that stage is that you end up learning this pattern of I have to take care of everyone else, and so that means I don't get taken care of at all. So if you sense or know people who, speaking exactly of myself, where I would tend to give up myself, give up what I needed so that I made sure your needs are met first, or my kids' needs are met first, or whatever the situation is, which was actually really unhealthy and was a real big sign of immaturity. A mature person, and we'll talk about this as we go into adulthood, is able to take care of two people at the same time equally. Yeah. And so
that's when the shift happens.
That's when the shift happens. But before we go there, jot this down. The primary task to be completed for a child is to take care of themselves. The primary resulting problem in an adult, if it's not completed, is they're not taking responsibility for themselves.
Yeah. So, awesome.
So as a child grows, they grow from being super self-centered. Remember how we talked about how they're super self-centered, to start being other-centered.
Yes. That going from that me to we.
Yeah. So this is kind of a fun question because we're about to talk about adults. Notice it jumps from child to adult. Yep. And notice that it goes up to the age of 12 for a child.
Yep. So adult starts at 13.
Oh. Well, here,
that's scary.
I would argue that here in America we'd say it starts at, I don't know,
26?
27. But it's actually not true.
No, because you should have learned everything, and you should have accomplished all the skills that you needed between the day you were born and the time you turned 13 to begin to function as an adult.
Yes.
Because the primary role of an adult is that I can take care of multiple people at one time.
Yes, myself and someone else. It's actually
just two people.
Primarily two people.
Yep.
And so the interesting thing is that your brain is capable of doing this. So this is another major brain stage change, is that the Lord designed it to where he suddenly begins to give you the ability to do this, but it goes a little bit haywire, especially in our modern day American teenager, because some of the skills are missing in maturity. And there's so much adulthood accessible without the requirement of relationship.
Yes. And also what happens too at that age is that, like Janelle said, there's your brain actually, brain science wise, it actually destabilizes, and and your thought process switches. So now it goes from, again, being taking care of myself being the most important thing to taking care of my community or the people around me are more important than, and as you people know, like teenagers, their friends are way more important than you parents.
Susie, you're not going to be allowed to go to that party. But Mom, all my friends. Right? Yeah.
And so
that group identity is so important, but that's actually a brain skill that they're learning where they stop focusing as much on themselves and they begin to focus on where they fit in the bigger picture, taking care of themselves and other people.
And it's our job as the community and parents to help guide them through that, because we're still teaching, but now it becomes more of a guiding and partnering with them, because now they're adults. So when they're kids, you tell them what to do. When they become adults, it's that thing of, okay, how can we do this together and partner with you as a teenager to help you walk this out to become a parent.
Right. Yeah, because that's the next stage, right?
Yep.
So also at this time, your brain actually loses the ability to quiet and regulate and fully control its impulses.
Surprise.
So those of you with teenagers at home, this is a real thing.
Yes.
So those emotions begin to rise and they don't fully have the ability anymore to quiet. And that's why, again, the community is so important at this stage. Your 13-year-olds having... and 15 and 16, 17-year-olds having really solid friends who help bring them back down. Because unfortunately, again, we're talking now adult, so they're rising. They're not your little anymore.
Yep.
And so they're starting to look outside of themselves to figure out who in the world they are.
Yes.
And when their emotions and their brain is not functioning in the way it was, they really need people to say, no. It's okay, Susie, this is who you are. And if they can get that from a really healthy peer, that's going to be something that they'll receive much more easily.
And we know that. We all know that. It's like when we tell our kids something, it goes in one ear and out the other. But their friend says it, or their friend's mom says it, then they're like,
Susie's mom told me
that.
Told me something, and you're like,
we've been saying that for 10 years.
That's a real thing.
It's a real thing, guys. It's a real thing.
But I want to, before we transition into the parent stage, we've talked a lot about teenager, because at the beginning, that's reality, right?
Yep.
But what we're actually talking about is adults.
Yes.
So
that's interesting.
So we're not talking about teenagers who are squirrely all over the place.
Right.
The teenager parts that we've just kind of joked about shouldn't be the entire length of the adult years.
Yeah.
Yes, you kind of lose your mind there in the beginning of part of this. But really, the journey should be that I am daily beginning to learn how to take care of myself and take care of others. And mature adults really can be and are looking for fully satisfying relationships.
Yes.
So they're looking for mutually satisfying relationships. Teenagers, as they're transitioning out of childhood into adulthood, tend to still have some of those flares of I'm still important in this relationship.
Yeah.
As you grow into adulthood, you should be able to say, I am important.
Yep.
We're not going to let that part go.
But so are you.
But so are you.
Yeah.
And I see that you have needs and wants, and I'm going to make sure those get met. And I'm at the same time going to make sure my needs and wants get met in this relationship.
Yes.
The best we can do. And as we all know, in a relationship with anybody, that's a constant dance.
Yeah.
But it's an important skill to practice, especially at this stage when there's no children.
Yeah, that's a whole nother...
Yeah, but we'll talk more about it.
Yeah, but I do want to read this, because I think this is really important. It says, adults know how to remain stable in difficult situations and can return self and others to joy. People who cannot do this will either avoid, escape, or get stuck in certain emotions, crippling many of their endeavors and relationships. You will rarely, if ever, see a mature adult turn to addictive behaviors to cope with their stress.
Yeah. Mature adults... as you said in that very first sentence, is that they have the ability to handle something hard. Remember, we learned as a child how to do hard things, right? So this isn't something we're supposed to be learning in adulthood.
Yeah.
This is something we're supposed to be continuing to practice, but we should have not mastered the skill, but gotten pretty good at the skill in childhood. So now as an adult, I know how to do hard things. now not only do I know how to do hard things, but I also know how to return to joy after doing those hard things. Yeah. And it's a very natural rhythm for me that I'm practicing at this point.
Another great thing about maturity is that and maturity also can be looked at this way. It's your ability to do hard things, or the ability to handle things, or the weight that can be put on you the older you get. So the older you become, or the more mature you are, the more weight you can handle.
Right. The harder things
you can do.
Yeah,
you can do the harder and harder things. That didn't make any sense.
And I'm learning how to do hard things for me and you
at
this stage.
At the same time.
Yeah. So I just want to circle back real quick because I don't want it to be missed that when an adult is struggling in maturity, addictions typically do rise. Because, and that could look like a variety of addictions. There's so many different options for us these days. But it looks like I'm trying to find a way to self-soothe the hard things that I'm not able to do.
Yes.
So typically, if I can do hard things and figure out how to recover from that, and I've got a community that says, gosh, that was a really hard thing, but you're not alone, then I can recover, and I don't have a need to go find something else to fill that.
Yeah. Because it's that mutually satisfying relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So the primary task to be completed in adulthood is taking care of two people simultaneously. The primary resulting problem in adulthood, if it's not completed, is the lack of the capacity to be able to be in a mutually satisfying relationships.
Got that?
That was rough.
That'll be in print.
That'll be in print somewhere.
All right. So parent stage.
Yep, two more. So hang on, guys. We have two more.
Yep. So parents become parents at the birth of their first child until their youngest child becomes an adult.
So what's the age of an adulthood? 13.
13. So, very countercultural.
Yes, it is.
American counterculture. Don't feel bad about that.
Yeah.
We've been taught something very different, but actually we're designed to be able to make
decisions
these turns. Yeah.
And make turns. Yeah.
So when you become a parent, you're no longer looking to take care of yourself and others equally like an adult would. Parents are looking to give away something that can't be given back.
Yep.
Parents are so full of the life skills and maturity that they've learned up until this point that they joyfully desire to offer to give it to the next generation.
Yeah.
Now, boy, this sounds a little bit utopic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because we all, when we decided to be parents, thought, I have so much that I have stored up for you, child. Maybe that's not a fair joke, but that was not our case.
No.
We were a little surprised.
Yeah, we were.
Our trade was a little surprised.
Yes.
So, if this was not something that we intentionally entered into, but could you guys imagine if this was something that your teenager was learning, or your young adult was learning that, hey, your time right now as an adult is actually to prepare to store up all the resources you can store up to give it away to the next generation, because that's actually the next life call you have. It really isn't about your next job or what you're going to do as a career. I think we get lost in that.
You do.
It's like your actual whole purpose for this next stage of life is to sow into the next generation.
And not only just sow into them, but you give sacrificially.
Mm-hmm. So that's a key piece.
Even if it costs you everything, you want to give, because there's nothing that would bring you more joy than seeing the next generation pass you.
Yeah.
And go past you.
Yeah. And we know about that sacrificial giving, right? That's where parenthood is really tested and grown. Yep. Is in the middle of the night when you are exhausted and your little baby has been crying all day, and you have to pull things from nowhere to continue to give when that child has nothing to give back and you have nothing else that you feel like you can even give.
Yeah.
That's a lot of where that parent maturity is born, is that I can now not worry about what I want, but take care of you first.
Yeah. And I want to pause here for 1 second, because I want to say something that's also really, really important that can get lost in this. Biologically, being a parent doesn't automatically put you in the parenting maturity. But singles can be parents as well. They can be in that same maturity level of a parent, because what happens is you have, you think of a young man who is in his 20s and he's mentoring a 12-year-old, and he's giving of himself sacrificially because he wants to he loves this kid and he wants to see him grow beyond himself and be
so
better.
maybe he's giving up time with his friends. He might be giving up money that he could be spending in other ways to sow into this kid. So you might see aunts and uncles doing this.
Yeah.
They're sacrificing something they want and need to, again, sow what they have into the next generation. This is why mentorship is so important, because it really is a continued practice skill. So one of the other things too that we talked about in that whole sacrificial giving is that even though you might feel exhausted and overwhelmed at times, you're still able to appreciate and not begrudge your sacrifice. So that is one way of testing if just even your maturity in this, right?
Yeah, where are you at?
Like, I'm sacrificing, but I hate it. It's when you can actually give joyfully that's a test of your maturity. Because we talked about this in the beginning, but maturity is tested not just in your ability to complete the skill or to do the thing. It's to do it joyfully. That's the catch. That's the key that is a sign
missing.
of true maturity. Not just doing it, but doing it with joy.
Yeah. So it is vitally important for parents to learn how to protect, serve, and enjoy their families, for all members to be fulfilled, balancing all three require community support and elder guidance. And we'll get to the elders in a moment. And elders are huge.
They are huge. And it's one of those things that's been really missing in the community for far too long. And we'll talk a lot about their importance. So let's make sure we have time to do that. One thing too to know is that mature parents know that they're aware that they can't actually provide everything that their kid needs. So they're looking in the community for other people to provide what they can't provide for their children. Because kids aren't meant, what was the old saying about kids in a village or whatever? Did I lose you? Okay.
Yeah, you didn't lose me.
So kids, it takes a village to raise a child, right? And it was one of those cheesy sayings that people felt different ways about, but it actually mature adults and mature parents should be looking for other people to sow into their kids. I can't tell you how important this was for my kids in their teenage years, especially, and how grateful I am for the people who could be another set of parents to my kids, especially at that time. We really didn't have it until the kids were teenagers.
No, we didn't.
But there was many times that I had different adults that I knew were mentoring my kids, and I could share things with them that were safe, and I knew my child would hear from them in a different way than they would hear from me.
Absolutely.
And I totally respected them, and knew that they were going to help walk alongside me and help me steward my kids.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for them.
Yeah, so
very grateful. Sorry, we were running out of power. I had to go plug in the...
Okay, welcome back.
I'm back, thank you. So real quick, so the primary task to be completed as a parent is to sacrificially taking care of children, and the primary resulting problem as an adult, if not completed, is distant, conflicted family relationships.
Yeah, you're missing the connection together, because again, I haven't learned how to take care of my needs and your needs at the same time, and I haven't been able to sacrificially give without being really angry about it. And so I kind of resent you a little bit because of all that I've had to give up for you. And so that's where those struggles begin. All right, guys.
Alrighty.
So here's the big stage.
Yes.
This is one of the stages that, I don't know, just turned on so many light bulbs for us. And looking at who's here today, I think this is going to relate. And we honestly went on a journey to find elders in our lives. Like, we went on a search because we looked everywhere and could not find them naturally. But even looking at the list of people that we have connection with today, I was really surprised by how many people that do belong in this stage, but aren't necessarily functioning here.
Yes.
And so let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that. So an elder begins when your youngest child becomes an adult.
So 13.
So and you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, but what happens is you're doing between 0 and 12. You're doing training. You're training. Train up a child in the way they should go. When they're old, they won't depart. You're training. And then when they turn 13, that's when the partnership happens, because now they're adults, because you've taught them what they need to learn to be to
take care of themselves,
and to begin to take care of others along with themselves. And so what that does for you as the parent, you move into the elder stage, because now you have been freed up to be able to look outside of your own home and begin to raise other people up where they are and pull them up to the next level of maturity. Now, again, that doesn't mean you neglect the kids in your home,
right? No.
By any means whatsoever. But it's a different relationship now. You're partnering with them, and now you're partnering with the other people. Now you've got more capacity.
Right, your capacity should shift.
To reach out outside of your home, outside of your local community, and help bring others up to the next level of maturity.
Right. So once you reach elder maturity, you're really supposed to be looking at your community and figuring out who needs to be parented.
Yeah.
So you've done your job as a parent. You've now raised your kid to adulthood. And obviously, again, 13 probably sounds like, that's not going to happen. Okay, so let's even use the American 18, 21.
Absolutely.
I'd be grateful if we had elders that had young adults and were ready to jump into this, but began looking around at their community and saying, okay, who didn't get infant maturity? Who didn't get childhood maturity?
Right.
Who can we go back and walk this through with? Because remember, in order to grow in maturity, you need community.
Yes.
Right? Well, it doesn't. What is community if all the community is busy,
right,
like taking care of themselves, right? Stuck in these little stages. That's where the elders get to come and show up and bring their capacity, their life skill, their maturity, and again,
and
remember,
their joy.
And their joy.
Yeah.
Key piece, right? Because we've done all these tough stages with joy. We've learned how to do them with joy. So when you're having a really...
hang on. I'm sorry. Let's we keep saying with joy.
Right.
We haven't explained what joy is.
Yes.
So let's do that really fast because you keep saying that. But joy is the experience and knowing that someone is glad to be with you.
Right. That's good. Yeah.
No matter who you are or what you've done, as again, like with the infants, like they're learning that I'm loved just because I'm breathing. And so what that does is they know that someone's glad to be with them. They're having joy because someone's glad to be with them because I'm here.
Right.
And so that's how come it's so important at that age there to begin to instill that into our infants.
Yeah.
So
and
we
when we
can
talk
live out of
about
it.
having joy, say at the parent stage in those sacrificial days of, you might be driving me crazy, but I'm still really glad to be with you.
Yeah.
And as an elder, if I can show up to you and say, I'm just really glad to be with you.
Yeah.
Even when you're acting like an infant and you're supposed to be an adult, or even when you're acting like a child and you're supposed to be an adult, that actually gives and empowers our entire community.
Yeah, it does. So as elders, you are parents at large to the community and its identity. So you're the one that's saying, this is who we are, this is how we live, this is what's important to us, this is the kind of child, infant, parent, adult that we're going to be in this community. So you're setting the standard and you're helping raise individuals to those standards.
Yeah.
I think another thing that elders are what we call a free agent of joy. I think that's awesome. You guys all know like the old grandmas and the granddads that walk around and they're like, you are so beautiful, you are so handsome, you are so talented, but they don't know you from Adam.
Right, yeah.
But
yeah, those little old ladies that give you that big old squeeze.
And $2.
And $2. I'll take
I'll take the $2.
But they're free agents of joy, right? Because they've already walked through all the stages, so they don't need anything from you. They've learned how to receive.
Yep.
They've learned how to take care of themselves. They've learned how to take care of themselves and someone else at the same time.
Yep.
They've learned how to give and love sacrificially.
Yes. Yep.
With joy.
With joy.
And so now, wow, how amazing is that?
Just to give it away.
To give it away.
Just to give it away.
And teach, not only give it away, but teach others how to do it.
Yeah. And they're the joy wild card. I mean, this is what makes a joyful community.
Yep. So one thing though, we're down to just a few minutes, so we're going to kind of button this up. We could talk on this all day.
If you guys have any questions, please go ahead and put those in there as well. If we can get to them, we will. If not, we'll answer them when we put out the notes.
Yep. So one thing that's really important is that elders actually need recognition from their community to be able to be the elders for their community. So we really believe that there's a lot of people who have reached this stage but are unrecognized. They're not being honored in the way that they could be or should be, which I'm not going to date this by making comments about our current life situation or world situation, but it's important that we invite them into relationship with us and invite them into feedback into our lives. Our culture has not honored elders well. Grandma or the retired man, even in society, the whole goal is like, I'm going to go off to my retirement and basically cut myself off from society, and we're
Right.
missing them desperately.
Yeah.
So if you know an elder in your life, I just encourage you to reach out to them, even just to let them know that they're loved and that they're seen, and just how valuable that they are.
Yeah. Another thing with the elders too, I think, because of the stage of life that they are in, is that true elders value all community members and see them as God sees them. They're looking past their flaws and the facades to see the person that they have been designed to be.
Yeah.
So it's looking past all the stuff that's out there, and you can really, as an elder, begin to speak into that, to who God created them to be.
Yeah, for sure. And true elders can also handle criticism and rejection. They can speak the truth in love, even when it's not easy or popular. That's why they're such a gift to the community. They can serve without being appreciated. They can encourage the needed growth and change. They can delight in younger people's skill and power and place what's best for the community over their own personal fairness and preference.
Yeah, and I think another awesome part about this too, if you think about it, the true elders aren't necessarily the leaders of the community.
Like, do you mean like direct leaders?
Yeah, I mean like
Yeah,
direct
that is
leaders. Like
interesting.
they're not the ones that are moving and shaking and doing all the
Right.
things. It's the parents and the adults that are actually doing it. Even if you look into society today, it's always the adults that are the people in the adult stage that are going the charges, going forth, making
changes
the
in the
causes
world,
and
yeah.
all those things. It's not the elders, but the elders are the ones that are the backbone of that community, of the change that's being made. They should be the ones that they're supporting them, they're cheering them on,
And making sure that those people who are in leadership have the maturity that they need
Exactly.
to be able to lead really well.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the primary task to be completed by an elder is sacrificially taking care of the community. And the primary resulting problem in an adult is that the overall maturity of the community declines. And
Yeah.
I think we see this.
We see
we
that.
see the fruit of
We
it.
see it absolutely.
So, all right, guys, we have 4 minutes.
4 minutes, 3 minutes,
Yes. Okay, so now you know all about, from a
50,000 foot view.
about maturity. So how do we grow in maturity? We don't want to leave you guys hanging, okay? But we
Yeah.
have 3 minutes. Are we ready?
So really fast. So the first thing. So you may have been listening to this and you're like, man, that didn't happen for me. Oh snap! I didn't do that with my kids. Oh, I don't understand. There's like all these different things. It's okay.
Yeah.
Maturity never ends.
Yep, always opportunity.
Always
to grow.
opportunity to grow. And so but you've actually done the first thing, and that's identifying the holes,
Right.
identifying
Yeah.
the maturity gaps that are there.
Yep. And then I would say the second big key thing is practicing in multi-generational community.
Absolutely.
So just like infants need their community to help them and adults need their community, you need it on all sides, right? Like you can't be an adult and have a mutual relationship if there's no adult to have a mutual relationship with. You can't be a parent if there's no child to sacrificially give
Yes.
to. You can't be an elder if there's no one to sow down into, and so on and so forth. You can't really be a kid if you don't have a parent.
Right.
And so multi-generational community is so important,
Yeah.
especially healthy, mature
Yes.
community.
Yeah.
So, in saying that,
And saying that,
we want to invite you guys to the, we are launching in May. You guys have heard about collabs. We have not done a great job describing them. So
No.
we've done a little bit better. We went back to the drawing board, rebranded them a little bit. So the better description for them really and truly is relationship labs.
yeah.
So we want people to have an opportunity not just to know this, right, but also to practice
To
this.
live it out.
And to live it out. Yep, because maturity happens only through practice and only through community.
Yeah.
So in May,
Starting May.
we're launching Relationship Labs. 4 weeks. We've shortened them to 4 weeks. We're going to focus on growing in specific areas of maturity over those 4 weeks. It'll be an intensive, and we're going to do it with community.
Yeah. And the great thing about it is it's not just like we're going to give you information and hammer things down your throat. It's going to be very much, let's assess where we are and how do we grow in this and how do we grow together in this and how do we walk this out together. How do we practice this?
Right.
And hold each other accountable to practicing.
Right.
And growing.
And our goal is to have the groups made up of that multi-generational
Yeah.
so that you can be both giving and receiving in that time. So check out the website, tableandwellco.com. I got a little distracted because I also, in the last 30 seconds, wanted to remind you that we're coming back and doing another workshop.
Yes.
on Friday night and Saturday morning. That's going to be about relational circuits,
Yes.
which is why can't I connect with the person next to me? What
That's
is going
good.
on?
Yep.
And then the second step is going to be a manual journaling.
And that is going to be focused on how to just create better connection between you and God.
Yep, really practical. And we'll actually walk through in that workshop how to.
And
We're
you'll
going
do
to
it.
give you
You're
time.
actually
You're
gonna
going to
do
do
it.
it in real time.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
This was really fun,
really
actually.
I
Much
truly
better
enjoyed
than
it.
what I thought it would be. So thank you all for joining us, and we will see you soon.
All right, guys. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.